Welcome to That Moto Show with Dirt Bike TV's Jay Clark and producer Donnie Bales.
All right, show number 16. Can you believe that, Donnie? And we're like through the halfway past the year now.
Yeah.
We started these like in the end of December, right?
Yeah.
Started, our first one was in December still.
I think so, yeah.
And so now we're fully committed. We're in. Number 16.
Yep.
What are some riders you think of?
Well, I've got two. Well, there's actually a lot, believe it or not, that have run 16.
Go, quick, that you can think of.
Steve Lamson ran 16.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
Greg Albertine ran 16.
Yep.
Doug Henry ran 16.
I don't remember that one.
John Dowd ran 16.
Yeah, so that's the one I thought of, was Dowd.
Okay, the Junkyard Dog is who I thought of first.
Right.
And
Lately, who's even running it right now?
Vial.
Oh, man, why don't I think of him? And
Why?
He's up front like every
He's
weekend.
up front. Vial is number 16.
Okay, so we can get 16s. Chaw, you think of any 16s?
He kind of named the ones that I thought about.
Okay.
I got an old school one.
Yeah.
What's that?
Warren Reed.
Warren Reed was a 16. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, and then now that we have more permanent numbering system, it gets a little bit more branded. So it's like, that becomes more of a thing.
Yeah,
But-
because those guys, when like Henry and Lamson ran them, they had only run them for a year. And
Right.
then they kept changing the numbers every year.
once in a while, a guy got lucky. And
Yeah.
Dubach.
Yeah.
Was Dubach 16?
Oh, he might have been.
Okay. Well,
That's my error.
okay. Well, how have those nationals been, Donnie?
Oh, well, listen.
The last two have been amazing. Southwick and
super not
Redbud.
happy that we lost somebody, but I'm happy for Chase and Redbud.
Right.
That's his home track. That was an amazing race, for sure.
I do think, not that I still think Jet would have probably done what Jet does, right? But he did seem to be a little bit on the ropes. I think his injury on shoulder or whatever is a little bit more. So this time off is probably going to let that heal, and while he recovers his thumb. But yeah, sure, made the 450 racing good, and the 250 racing has been amazing. So,
Yeah.
Both the second motos at Southwick and the first motos at Redbud were some of the best motos
For sure.
of the year, right?
For sure.
Of the last few years. So
How
I'm
impressive is Ty Masterpool, dude?
yeah, it's so
Like-
cool. He didn't have a good Southwick, so
Yeah.
he must not be sand
Not a
friend.
sand guy.
So I was kind of worried that after the high point that okay, he's not really there. It was just like a freak deal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but he comes back at Redbud and that first moto looks insane and kind of spin himself. So second moto he doesn't get the overall, but Chance Hymas does, which I don't think any of us would have bet money that
No.
Chance Hymas would.
I didn't see the
would win.
whole. I didn't understand the whole, or it wasn't made clear the whole penalty deal. I didn't see it happen. I looked for it.
Yeah,
and-
they have a tough time because I think they don't have as many cameras as maybe they could or should because they're relying on the drone because that's less. I think it's less money than having
Right.
camera stations all over.
Yeah.
Right, so I think they're missing some of those. They didn't have Deegan's crash
No.
even during the broadcast, so we never knew.
They never even mentioned it.
Yeah, I looked at the times and he went down like 10 seconds, and I'm like, whoa, what happened there? And that was like there was like 3 or 4 laps left, 5, and we could have. I think he would have probably got a couple guys and got himself on the podium.
Besides this 6 that he got, what's the worst moto he's gotten so far?
That was it.
No. I mean, what's been the worst? Did he get a third?
I don't even know.
I don't think he's gotten a third. I think he's only gotten a second or first.
So it's been a great season. It's good to actually see some of the Cowies back up there, like that with him. But I heard they don't even have a spot for sure for him for next year. How crazy is that? For Masterpool.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have too many guys.
Too many guys, yeah.
Once they're all healthy, they are all committed.
Well, maybe they can go to Star Yamaha. I mean, you ever seen how many bikes they have lined up?
They're not going to turn him down, right?
I don't think they turn any riders down.
Not that are good and can win, right? And he's capable of winning some motos. I think Supercrosses might be a tough, right? And then that pressure. Now, if he rides Supercross, he's going to have pressure to do well, and that's when guys don't make it to outdoor.
Yeah,
100% healthy.
He was also. I mean, you got to say he was really good on a 450 too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like the kid was impressive.
Okay, I'm going to read our don't forget to email us for questions on the show. Email me questions directly from the site, that whole thing. You can send us those questions. What do I do with my glasses? There we go. We got no Spencer on the line or anything, right? We're just solo.
This is I had a break, man. I had a vacation from a show.
Yeah, we did the
You
remote
guys
show.
did the remote show.
The comments were really good. Everybody liked it. So
I
the
liked
last
it,
show
actually.
we've done so we've done 15 here, and one remote show on the trailhead up in Idaho we did a week and a half.
I loved how you guys. I wasn't there, so
Yeah.
I loved how you guys laid out the table and everything. It really was cool.
Yeah, we have a rental van is what we used.
Yeah.
Because I flew to Salt Lake and then drove from there up to our spot, which I just said where it was, but I shouldn't say that.
Hey, I got distracted with some pictures of me on the thing back
Yeah,
there.
there's going to be some on there. It's rotating through. I mean, this is how professional we are. I have rotating photos going through Donnie's computer there.
Nice.
On the Google Doc thingy drive deal. So we got into some amazing riding. We had 3 good days of riding. I only fell a few times. Smoked 1 clutch is all. We went up one trail that went to nowhere, but on the map we thought we could get through because it's supposed to go through, but it had an avalanche area, burn area, whatever. No way you're getting through there, and it was a gnarly uphill. And but I rode the 300 a bunch, the 2-stroke, and the mountain trails. I will say that 300 is pretty dang good. So, I got the first question, it's not really a question, a tech question. It's more of we get a lot of guys asking us about different bikes they should buy because I did a video on buying used bikes and different things.
Yeah.
And one of the big things lately has been guys hit me up about an old 4-stroke, and that's really a tough thing in some cases because you get a older 4-stroke, man, a 250F, 450, it doesn't really matter. You get an older one, something goes wrong with that, which is probably going to, you're parting it out most of the time, because it's going to make more financial sense to part it out than to try to rebuild it.
You're basically rolling it to the side of your house and leaving it there.
And it's not just the labor, it's the valves. And so if the head is damaged, and let alone cases, okay, so if cases are ruined, you're game over. But if the head's damaged, the head alone can be, $400 to $600, and then you need all the valves, springs, retainers, all those pieces add up to another $500 to $700 to rebuild the head. So very expensive. And if it's been run low on oil, then the cam journals are ruined. So then you need new cams, and it just adds up. So, and that's on top of getting a crank and a piston and all that. So,
Right. If you're buying a used 4-stroke like that, you have no idea how it's been maintained, how it's been ridden, where it's been. If somebody's flooded it, or literally in a lake, or you don't have any idea what that bike's been through.
well, I got a great question this week. This guy's debating buying 2 different bikes, and he's got a lower budget, I think around $3,000, which is pretty low, as you know, in dirt bike world,
Yep.
right? So I tell guys, if you can get up into the 6 to 7 range, you can get a lot better bike typically. I tell most guys, if they're in that $3,000 to $4,000 budget, to try to find a 2-stroke, like a YZ250, like a 05 to 10, whatever you can find, because you can repair it fairly inexpensively if you do it before it goes catastrophic, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I tell most guys to look for a 2-stroke. And if they're in that budget range, much better off. And then especially don't buy high-hour 4-strokes. But this guy's question, and I forgot, unfortunately, I didn't keep his name. How terrible is that?
That's pretty bad. Yeah.
So we're going to call it Dude looking for a bike. And he says, first
Bike
off,
dude.
thanks for all you do to help the dirt bike community. I've learned a ton of information through the podcast while mowing my lawns. So that's nice, right?
Yeah.
He's out there just listening to the podcast. That's pretty cool. I'm getting back into the sport and want to get your opinion on the 2014 KTM 350 XCF. I have an opportunity to get one for under 100 hours, under 100 hours, so it's probably 99 for $3,000. The bike has a recluse clutch, Scott's stabilizer, breakaway bars, and new fuel pump. I heard in episode 4, so this guy really pays attention because I couldn't tell you what I said in episode 4, that you recommended a 2017 and up. And why is that? Is there anything I should be cautious about? I also have an opportunity at a low hour 07 CRF 250X, the same price. Not sure which to go for, as I will mostly be using it for hunting, scouting purposes, up in the high mountains, dirt roads, occasionally single track. The extra displacement will come in handy, but not 100% for sure I need it. And then he lists some information. I have photos that you can show, Donnie, during this little thing. That the guy sent me some cool photos of the 2 different bikes, right?
Yeah.
The 14 has lists all those parts, and it has mooses and blah, blah. The CRF 250X is in great shape. We're low hour, second owner, and it has handguards, and new fork sills were just put in, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, first of all, those CRF 250Xs from 4
It's
to
the
17.
It's the only they made the same bike.
So yeah, from 04 to 17, they offered the same bike. It was electric start, carbureted, 250. It's actually a really good
You
bike.
had a grip of it.
I had, you're going to laugh, I had 5 of these at the same time, 5 or 6 at the same time. It was 33, 133, 233. And the reason is because I was finding these things. This is at the last crash, which hopefully we're not heading to, but I'm afraid we are. But so what was that? Like in 09, 10, 11.
10,
in
9,
there,
10.
I was buying 250Xs, like clean ones from construction guys who just sold their toy hauler, right?
Yeah.
I was buying them for $800 to $1,500.
Holy cow.
Like clean ones. Like clean bikes, but no one was buying them. So I bought up a bunch of these things. We did little mod stories with these things.
Yep.
And these bikes are amazing. My buddy Brad did the carb setup on them. And if you just did the carb and a muffler with things, they ran great. And they're good for most guys. Now, they're a little heavy for tight trails, okay? They don't have as much as a 350, obviously. But that is the bike that I recommended for him in this case because that KTM, while the newer 2017 is a newer generation frame, newer generation engine and suspension, that older version was really heavy and really slow. And I think the electronic and engine problems with that bike, I would say still look for a 17 and up if you're going to go with that KTM 350.
You have to because even the 16 had the 4CS forks that
Right.
were terrible.
Right.
The 17 forks got a lot better.
And the
on that
16 bike is good.
It's good.
So if somebody's converted the forks, that's
Yeah.
fine, but not with those 4CS forks.
Those 4CX forks were terrible.
You never had to mess with those, did you? Okay, he was already gone. So we'll get into that with our guest. So that's the question. Unfortunately, I don't have his name. Maybe if I send you his name, you can put his name on the screen.
We can put it
but that
up
won't help the guys that are listening to this.
Tyler W's his name.
On the podcast world,
Right.
right? So anyway, so that's our first and only kind of tech question for the most part. We have a mechanic guest for you, a professional mechanic. We're going to bring him in right now, and we'll go over some cool things. He brought in some tools and all kinds of things. We also have a few photos from his career and so forth. We'll bring those in. We'll be right back. Okay, we are here. We're with Mike Chavez, who works for Kawasaki in the media department. Would that be correct? What do they call it?
So I work in tech services.
Tech Services is the official name. And
So we support all the media marketing people.
okay, and he's been doing this for I'm gonna guess. Hold on, I'm gonna guess since like 12 years, 13 years.
16.
Dang it!
He just turned 16 in January.
Gosh, I was way off. All right,
Yeah.
I'm usually pretty good about that. You know, what I'm really good at, Donnie, is guessing people's movie stars' ages.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, when we're watching a movie, my wife goes, "How old do you think they are?" And I'm usually within a year or two.
Okay, now we're getting off on a tangent, but I can guess the year of the movie within a year.
Right.
As long as it's not a new one.
Right. No,
Like,
but
if it's-
80s is a
Oh,
lot easier.
I can do 80s. I'm dead. I'm dead on.
All right, that's
all
good.
the way even through the 90s.
All right. So you've been at Kawasaki 16 years, and so that's the main time I've been dealing with Cha. Is a lot easier to say, right?
Yeah.
That's
Cha. A lot of people know me by Cha.
Cha. Okay, and has been around the circuit. What year was your first job in the industry?
Well, my first job in the industry was around 79,
Yeah.
and I was working for Gary Denton.
Oh, so you started straight away as a mechanic. You didn't work at a shop or anything first.
I did when I went to college. So I went to college in 78, 79.
Okay.
Went to junior college, LA Trade Tech, and they had a motorcycle program, and that's where I went to school.
How cool is that? And unfortunately, I'm guessing that doesn't even exist anymore.
I don't think it does. No.
So was Gary riding dirt bikes still then? Or did
Yeah, he was a
switched
Honda
over?
support rider.
But he hadn't switched over to the dark side.
No, not yet. No, not yet. He had so the year that I worked for him, he had just came off an injury. He had broken his arm, and he was looking for a mechanic. He still had Honda support ride back then in the early 80s. Honda supported a lot of privateer riders, and he got like a budget and bunch of bikes, and he had a van. And Gary was during that time he was like a local hot pro, that did all the night races, the Irwindales, Orange County, Corona, Saddleback, Carlsbad.
I raced Corona Night Track. I raced Ascot and OCAR.
And so obviously you're from Southern California.
Yes.
Originally. Okay.
Yes.
So then you start helping him, and then were you mainly going to like CMC races and those types of things?
I went
local?
to actually, I went to 2 nationals. I went to Binghamton, and I also went to St. Petersburg.
So you decided to go to the farthest nationals you could possibly go to from
Well,
here.
yeah. Well, see, when Gary came off his injuries, those were the only nationals that were left, and he wanted to go to them because he was still trying to prove that he needed results.
And was he getting top 20s at those? Was
I think we DNF'd those races.
Oh.
We had some engine issues. He had.
were they your fault?
Yes, actually.
Oh,
They were.
sorry.
They actually were my fault. Yeah. Well, I'd say partial. So the equipment that we had was already been used. And so when I assembled the engine, I didn't torque the head properly.
Right.
And it blew a head gasket. It did it twice.
Oh.
But what was another issue was we had Paul Feed was helping us.
Okay.
And Paul Feed figured out that it was already stripped. The cylinder, the studs going in the cylinder had
pulling out.
already been pulling out before I even got the bike. That was from his previous guy.
Okay.
So a partial blame.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a great first couple.
No,
races
it
there.
wasn't. It wasn't.
Was Paul back then giving you theories of thermodynamics?
No, not at that point. Paul was working in the dealership. He was still developing those theories.
Yeah.
So that was a good start. So then I was going to go backwards, but let's talk about that. And then, so where did you, after this trade school, you worked for him a little bit, and then where did you go next?
So then I started working for Yamaha.
Straight away. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that because of the relationships you built? Did you see you around?
Well, so one of the whole reasons that I went to Trade Tech was I had heard that they had hired, OEMs had hired people that had graduated from that school.
Okay.
And so Dave Arnold went to that school. A guy named Mark Porter, who hired me, went to that school.
Okay.
Bill West, who was a mechanic, he went to that school. So that's one of the reasons why I went there.
Well, nowadays it's pretty much MMI.
Yeah.
Or there's that one, I forget the name of it. It's back in Morgantown, West Virginia. The guy Scotty has one that's more, and that's where a lot of the guys they shoot. I saw a thing the other day. They posted they have like 10 current mechanics of the pros. And it's more just dirt bike focused.
Right.
It's not giving you street bike knowledge or anything like that.
Right.
It's just dirt bikes.
Right.
And so those are kind of the only real schools that I've seen as of late. And unfortunately, there's probably not any other real ways anymore. So that's cool that you had that opportunity, and in Southern California, which unfortunately that stuff's not around anymore.
No.
So okay, so then you just applied at Yamaha.
Yeah. So one of my classmates got a job. We actually had applied to Yamaha at the same time, and they actually hired him. And then a year later, there was another position open, and he let me know. And then I applied, and I actually interviewed with Mark Porter twice.
Okay.
And then the second time he hired me, and they said, well, the reason that I didn't hire you the first time was because I thought you were too young. I was like 20 when I applied. He thought I was too young and too motocross focused.
I saw the photos. Because they wanted guys that could do other stuff too.
Exactly.
Okay. I saw some of the photos that we'll show on the show here. You were pretty young looking in a lot of those photos. So so I guess I could see that. Hey, before we move too further on, but you grew up obviously riding bikes too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
And then how long did you ride bikes and then realize that you weren't going to go pro yourself?
About 6 months or something.
6 months.
Yeah, so I started riding when I was about 13.
Okay.
So I got a used Yamaha AT1.
Okay.
125.
Yep.
And that thing blew up right away. And actually, I didn't fix it. I didn't know anything. We looked at it, and I was like, so we took it to the local dealer. He fixed it, and then I rode that for a little bit a while, and then I ended up getting a Montesa, a 250 Montesa
Okay.
was my next bike.
And that was it? How old was it when you got it?
It was new.
Oh, it was new.
74.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so it was new, and did you ride that? You rode that for a while?
I rode that for a while, and then I bought a Yamaha YZ250, the the monoshock. Like, I think it was
76?
78 is what I think I bought.
78. You think you got one?
Yeah.
And those were pretty
77
cool.
or 78. It was the one that, remember when Hannah
Yeah.
won, like, in Florida, the series, the winter series.
Yeah.
He won the first couple races, and it was a stock YZ 250.
Yeah.
So that was a bike that I bought.
With that triangle swing arm.
Yeah,
right? The
exactly.
swing arm.
And then
Yep.
I think they sold a lot of those bikes.
I think they did too.
I think they did.
Yeah.
Because definitely. We just ran a video on one of those with Ventco.
Yeah.
That Disco
I just
Dave
saw
built.
it, yeah.
It was it's nice looking bike he did, and it was a lot of work to restore one of those.
I can imagine.
Yeah, because nothing's easy
No.
on those older bikes. As
Yeah.
you know, they weren't easy then, right? Like
No.
once you had an engine go apart or anything like that.
Right.
So okay, so then you realized, hey, I'm gonna go to trade school, all that, and so you got on with Yamaha, and then tell us about those Yamaha, because you were at Yamaha how long?
10 years.
10 years. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I started with Mark Porter hired me. I started in the testing department, which is like testing R&D and kind of their media. So that's all rolled into one. And I worked there for about a year and a half. And then there was some reorganization of certain areas. And so they moved me into comp support, which is a similar program to like Team Green.
Okay.
And so I got moved into there, and then the people that were working, we kind of switched positions. People that had been working in there, which was Ed Schuyler and Joe Wilson, they moved into the testing department. Then I moved over into comp support and started going to all the amateur races.
Okay. And is that where you started getting connected with some of the faster Yamaha?
Yeah, so that was how I met like Damon Bradshaw. He was riding 65s. Eddie Hicks, Bobby Moore.
He's riding a 60.
A 60. Yeah, at that time it was a 60. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Yamaha had this trick 60 that they made for the mod class for Damon.
Oh my God.
And it had been like through several generations of like 2 or 3 years of riders. It had long suspension. It was all tricked out. Had a special airbox.
Oh, wow.
Had all these like pretty cool gadgets. And every year they would bring it out, and then whoever was like the top 60 rider at that time got to ride it.
I think I remember hearing about this.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that thing too.
All right. So you had good years at Yamaha, and then you started transitioning to some pro riders, right?
Yeah, so around 84, there was some changes again in the company, and I didn't really have like a direct supervisor. So then the manager came to me. I think it might have been Larry Griffiths at that time.
Yeah.
He came to me and said, hey, he goes, well, we're going to move you into the race shop so that we can kind of keep an eye on what you're doing and have somebody to kind of actually like supervise you. And so Keith McCarty was a supervisor of the race shop at that time, or like team manager. And so he became my supervisor, and I went in there. And then basically he just said, hey, we're going to have you do the part stuff. We're not going to have you do any more amateur. So I was kind of like the parts guy, track guy, practice mechanic. And so I did all that kind of stuff. And like when the mechanics, when they were on the road, they would call in and say, hey, I need these items. And then I'd box them up, ship them, get together. Me and Bob Oliver kind of were the shop guys at that time.
Is Bob still there?
No, Rob's
Just retired.
now.
Retired, right? Because it was recent.
A couple years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was a good one there, and obviously Schuyler retired. It's been a little while.
He's
now.
been a while. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's been a while.
But so you got in
retired.
there, and nowadays there's every race team has at least one guy doing what you're talking about. That was kind of doing,
Yes.
organizing all the parts and all that stuff, and
so
going
the
out.
guy that does it, like I know about like Kawasaki. Kurt Root is the guy that does it for our race team, for the Cowie race team.
He used to be a jet ski guy.
Yeah, he did, and he's been around a while. He actually worked at Honda for a while, like R&D and Cowie R&D and jet ski.
Yep.
So yeah, Kurt's been around.
Very cool. Well, and then so tell us about what then you started. Then how did that transition into working with riders?
Okay, so then they were looking. We used to use Ohlins at that time, Ohlins suspension, or at least the shock. Forks, I don't quite remember. I think it might have been KYB or. But anyway, they wanted to get away from the Ohlins. There was Stig Pedersen.
Yep.
So Stig was our suspension guy
Okay.
at that time. And so then they wanted to get away from Ohlins. And then they decided they were going to use KYB stuff, and then they asked me if I wanted to be the suspension guy, or basically told me I was the suspension guy.
There you go.
So I did the suspension for about a season, maybe a season and a half.
Okay.
And then John R., who was Brock's mechanic at that time, he wanted to get off the road. And so him and I switched positions. That was probably around 86.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. 88. So around 87, going into the 88 season, we switched jobs.
Okay.
And so then I ended up being Brock's mechanic for the 88 season.
And now you're on the road full time.
Pretty much,
And,
yeah.
you hadn't been.
Not full time, but I was going at, so during like the 86, 87 season, I had been going to the races because I was doing suspension. So they were flying me, I was flying out to the races.
Okay.
And I was taking care of all the suspension stuff.
And then the mechanics, they didn't get to fly back and forth.
No, at that time we were still in box fans.
Yeah, so they-
and they were driving
Yeah.
all around the states, all the circuit.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay. So now you start working for Golden Boss, I call him.
Golden Boss.
Because he's my Dunlop boss. He's a great guy. So,
Yeah, Brock's really good. I actually learned a lot from Brock. Brock's pretty demanding at that time.
I could imagine though, but he wanted to win and do well.
Yeah,
right?
he wanted to win. He wanted to do well. You know, he was his career at that time was starting to wind down. He had just came off an injury, and like I said, I learned a lot from him. I actually got my first race win with Brock. Was the LA Coliseum.
Okay.
1988.
That's cool.
Yep.
Well,
I still have his trophy.
you still have it?
Yeah. So
No, he might ask for it back.
no, he's asked me a couple times. I told him to come get it, and then he goes, "Well, just hang on to it." For me. Yeah.
Very cool. That's rad.
So, do you want me to tell you a little Brock story?
I would love it,
Most of
yeah.
You probably have heard of this, but
I don't know.
so anyway, LA Coliseum. So Brock, like I said, was in the twilight of his Yamaha career,
Right.
and he ends up winning the Coliseum race,
Right.
which was totally out of the blue.
Right.
And so Brock does his interview. He's down, because we were up on top of the peristyle in the grass area.
Yep.
So Brock is down at the track floor, and he's doing his post race interview thing and doing all that stuff. So anyway, we're waiting for Brock to come up. So as Brock comes up, the team just kind of leaves, and I was there waiting for Brock because I had to get his bike, and I had his trophy. And then he comes rolling up and he says, "Where's everybody?" I go, "Oh, well, they all left." And then he was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Well, that sucks." And I go, "Well, yeah." I go, "But let's go out to dinner." So we ended up going and celebrating, me, him, and Mitch. So Mitch had built the pipes for Brock.
Okay. So
And so Mitch came rolling up and he's like, "Hey, we're all going to go out. Let's go celebrate." So we all went out and had celebration dinner with Brock.
so the team didn't care that much that they won a Supercross.
No.
Like,
It was different.
It was at that time. They were used to winning a lot.
Well,
over the years.
they were used to winning a lot, and then they kind of were like over Brock, I guess, in a sense,
That's
which I hate to say.
right,
it
but
was,
and things happen.
yeah,
right.
things happen. Yeah,
Yeah. So one of the interesting things, I've been to where Brock's vacation house. I've been up there.
Yep.
And we drove one day, and he showed me the distance he would bike for training,
Okay.
like in the early mid '80s.
right.
It's pretty gnarly.
Is it?
We're talking from 6,000 to 8,000 feet or something.
Yeah.
And he would bike this from this town to this town, and then stop, have a little lunch break or whatever, and then
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Gnarly. And so every time we drive it, Spencer and I drove it this year, we drive that segment and we're just picturing somebody biking this
Yeah,
section.
yeah,
I'm
right.
like, there's no way.
Yeah.
No way.
This is why you're not a champion, Jay.
You're right. And not only that, so when it was uphill all the way, and then it got to a steeper uphill to get to this next town.
Yeah.
And then you had to go down to the town.
Okay,
So then when you
yeah.
left, it wasn't like it was all downhill back.
Right.
You had to leave, then you went uphill. Okay. So
Right.
it wasn't like it was all downhill. So anyway, it was just pretty gnarly. So he definitely was a pretty good trainer back then, committed to training back then.
Well, for sure. I remember John R. telling me stories about he knew when Brock was like in championship form.
Right.
Only because his practice bikes would be worn out. Like, so
Right.
if his practice bikes were worn out, he knew that he was really on it. And
Right.
if it came back and it was just like minor stuff, then he knew he hadn't been riding too much.
You mean unlike Ronnie, like unlike Lachine, right?
Yeah, his bikes were probably pristine.
Yeah, his bikes were never used.
So you worked with him through '88, and then he leaves, right? After that.
Yeah, he left after that, and I think he did the KTM.
Right.
He got a KTM deal in Europe to do Grand Prix.
Yep, for a couple years, I think. And then what'd you do?
So, so during that time, if you remember, they used to split up the 250 500 series.
Yep.
So the 125s would go the whole length. I don't remember how many races. It might have been like 15 races or whatever it was. But the 250 500s would do, the 250 would do half the series and the 500 would do the
Yep,
other half.
yep.
So at that time, Yamaha didn't have
They had that 490 that they'd pretty much given up on racing, right?
pretty much. And so Brock didn't have we didn't have a bike to race the 500s on. So they basically just, after the 250 series was over, Brock was just pretty much done.
Okay.
So then Damon was turning pro, and they needed somebody to take his bike to Millville after Loretta Lynn's, because Loretta Lynn's was the last amateur race that he raced
Okay.
on in the 125s, and I don't know if he raced the 250 there or not.
But you went out there and helped him for that.
So yeah, we prepped bikes for Damon, and we took him to
So he's getting legit factory guys going to help him.
for Millville. Yeah,
yeah.
I was the first guy that helped him.
Oh, so Millville was Millville right after Loretta's?
Yes, it
Okay,
was.
so at Loretta's, does he do well? Win a class or two?
I believe he does. I don't know the exact stats, but I believe he won some classes there.
Right. A lot of those guys didn't have like Alessi or Cincero with tons of championships. A lot of them didn't have like they do nowadays. So then you go to Millville, and how do you do at Millville that
I
first
think
one?
he got 4th overall.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good for your first one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So then, and does that lead into the next year?
Yep. So then, so I had already, like I said, I knew Damon since he was on minis, and I knew his family. And so then basically, once Brock was done, and I helped Damon for Millville, I think we did a couple nationals. I think we did Washougal. We did the last few nationals, and so then they said, "Hey, we're going to have you work for Damon next year."
Okay.
And so during the off season, we went to Japan,
Okay.
Osaka. I don't know if you've heard about that race.
No.
So he wins his first Supercross
And this is on a 250, right?
on a 250. He's a rookie. He's like 17 years old.
Hasn't even raced a 125 Supercross yet, right?
No, he went straight into a
Isn't that
250.
gnarly?
That's crazy.
And he ended up beating all the top guys. There was like Rick
Right.
Johnson,
I totally
Lordy,
remember all that.
Yeah.
all those guys were there.
He won 4 Loretta Lynn championships.
4. Okay.
Yeah.
And then to go there and to ride a 250 Supercross in Japan and he never rode 125 Supercross before.
Right.
So
Well, I think that because really the 125 Supercross didn't even start until 85, right? So it wasn't as pushed upon.
Right.
Like a lot of guys went straight to the 250 class. I mean, it happened, I don't say all the time, but Lachine did it too, where he ran a bunch of 250 races.
yeah. So then you're thinking, hey, you definitely are on with the right guy here, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was really the Osaka thing was completely unexpected, and even like Ricky, because Damon had got the start, the track was it was actually a track that really favored Damon. It didn't have the big gnarly doubles at that time,
Right.
and it was a little bit like sandy, and so he got the whole shot and he got going, and even Ricky towards those last few laps, was really leaning on him and actually kind of knocked him down, and Damon just stayed in front of him and he won the race. So at that point, it was completely unexpected, and then they asked me, they said, yeah, we want to have you work for Damon for next year, and he's going to ride the 125s. And he actually raced a few Supercross races at the very beginning of '89 on a 250. He might have raced like the first 2 or 3.
Because there was like a west and east.
Yeah, exactly. Because
He
there was
rode Charlotte or whatever, I think.
Well, then he was going to ride the 125s on the East Coast. So at the beginning of the season, he rode a 250 for a few races, and then he started prepping for
125.
125 East.
And did he win that?
He won that's his only championship.
Oh,
Is 125 East.
which is such
Regional.
which is so crazy because you would have bet at the time he would have had quite a few.
You would have thought.
You would have thought, barring an injury, you know?
Right.
But I think I want to get to the further part of this story because I have some guesses or opinions as to what contributed to that. But what's then? So goes through 89, and then what comes next?
So after 89, they move him up into 250, which in hindsight, at the time I thought he shouldn't be doing it. I think he should have stayed another year.
Okay.
I mean, he had the talent. Obviously, he proved that he could win. And I think at Anaheim, one of the very first Anaheim, I think he might have got a fourth or something, a fourth or fifth. But I think just the not physical, but the mental drain or the mental focus that you need to ride with those guys. I don't think he was ready at that point or mature enough at that time.
Right,
and I think he should have stayed on the 125 another year.
Yeah.
But I know that Yamaha and his parents and I think they wanted to move up in the 250.
Nowadays that would never happen. Like,
No, I don't-
not 1 year. You wouldn't do just 1 year. Even Jet did. Now he did get hurt, but he had
3, didn't he?
because he had the
Yeah.
year he got hurt, and then he had 2 good years.
2 good
Right.
years.
Two
yeah,
good
he had
years
3
where
years, yeah.
So that's a guy that had 3. He had the one where he knocked himself silly.
Yeah,
I
battling Ferrandis.
think he did a collarbone or something
Yeah.
when he
Yep.
knocked himself. And then he had 2 good years, great years, we'll say, right? Like
Yeah.
he won
two mediocre years.
for Jet. Yeah. So anyway, he did those, and I don't think anybody nowadays would even think of 1 year when you're 17 or 18.
No.
How was he, like 18 then?
Um,
When he moved up to
he might have been 18 when he went to the 250 full time.
Yeah. So then how did that go?
So we won first Anaheim.
Okay.
We won the second race in San Diego. No, Texas. It was Houston. Then we came back to San Diego and he got hurt. He clipped this wall thing that you kind of went up and down, and he hit his ankle or something.
Is that the one that pulled him off his bike and he flung
he
around
flips-
in the
kind of
air?
flips
Didn't that happen to him where he caught something and it?
he
flipped
kind
off?
of flips over
Yeah.
the other side and the high side, I think, and then he gets up and he's kind of limping, and then he hops on the bike, and then I don't know what he finished or if he did finish, but he tried to ride through it, and then I think at Seattle, somebody at the start of the main, somebody landed on him on a throttle, and that ripped that off, so we didn't finish Seattle, and then we went into Daytona or Atlanta. And then Atlanta, he actually led for a little while, and then Kurdowski took him out. And then after that, they said, it looked like your ankle. He still was complaining about his ankle, so they went in, they figured out that it was a fracture, and then he just sat out a few races after that to heal up.
Okay. And then outdoor, and then did you guys do outdoor that year?
Yeah, we did 250 outdoor. Well, I'm sorry, we kind of missed that. He actually finished second in the 125 Nationals in 89.
That's really good. Who won that year?
So that was Kurdowski.
Okay.
And it went
On a
down to
Honda.
the last.
He won on a Honda.
Yeah, it went down to the last race.
Kudrowski.
Do you think that Honda was a lot faster, better bike than the Yamaha 125 in 89? In 88?
Well,
It would-
the
88.
Yamaha wasn't the greatest bike, but we got it running actually really good.
Right.
We had a guy named Bud Asklin,
Yeah.
who worked with like Kenny Roberts and all those guys. So he built, he ported and modified the cylinder and built these pipes like hand cone pipes. Did all this crazy stuff, and they got it running pretty good.
Okay.
And then he ended up second in the 125 Nationals, and then after that he moved up into the 250s, and then we did the Supercross, and then he went in and did outdoors. And I think outdoors he might have won 1 or 2 races. Damon was the kind of guy that if he wanted to win, he would win. Like if it was a track that he liked and the conditions were like,
Right.
this is my day, I'm going to win here, he would just go out and smoke everybody. That was just kind of the way he was.
That's it. He was cool to watch when he was on.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think we might have won like I know like Morgantown, like High Point. So High Point
He
was
loved High Point.
a really
Yes.
good track that he loved. Axton, what was that track? Axton, West Virginia.
Yeah.
I can't think of the name of that track.
Sugar?
Yeah, Sugar Tree,
Yeah.
Lake Sugar Tree.
Yeah.
And what was another track that he really liked?
That was Gary Bailey owned that track, right?
Yeah, Gary Bailey owned that track.
the Lake
So
Sugar
there was a
Tree.
few tracks that he really liked, and he could really go fast.
And you were having a good time working with him. And
Yeah, we had a good relationship. You know, as like in that second year, you could kind of see some changes in Damon. You could see that he moved out of the house. You know, he was still pretty young. I mean, I think he was
Right.
still like 18. He'd already bought in like a house. You know, he had a girlfriend, and you could just see little changes in like his training habits, things like that, especially towards the end of the season.
Little changes in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I think so. I would say so. You know,
and he might say so now, like looking at it later.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, like I said, he was pretty young, and I think that's why I think that it hurt him moving up into that class
Right,
so
that's-
soon, so quickly. You know, and not. I mean, if you look at the guys that he was racing against, he was racing. You know, Jeff Stanton. He was racing Jeff Ward. I mean, these guys were all seasoned veterans.
And he had
you
a
know?
lot. It seemed like at that time there was a lot focused on him. It seemed like the media and everything
Right.
was really, really focused on Damon.
Oh, it had to be a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Well, he was like the wild child, the beast from the east.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and he had great style. He
Yeah.
wore really cool gear and all
Yeah.
that kind of
I
stuff.
mean, you guys were probably one of the more popular, stops in the pits for people wanting
Oh, yeah,
autographs
for
and
sure.
everything with him, right?
For sure.
It was because a lot of the other guys weren't as like didn't have that charisma, I guess. You
Right.
know, like
Yeah,
like
he had
Stanton.
that. He had that charisma that I'm gonna win. You know, I don't really like. None of these guys are my friends. You know,
Right.
I don't make friends. I'm out here to beat them. You
Right.
know, he had that kind of mentality.
And then he always looked cool too with the mullet,
Yeah.
the mullet and the fox gear.
yeah,
And then he always had a cool
Was it
look.
like
Yeah.
the leopard pants?
Yeah.
Or whatever they were?
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So then, how does the rest of that play out?
So at the end of '90, so McCarty comes to me and says, "Hey," he goes, "We want to make some changes with Damon." And I'm like, "Okay, so what's going on?" And so he says, "Well, we want you to be in the shop and do motor work, and we're going to bring in Brian Lunas,
Right.
and Lunas is going to work for Damon." And that was kind of, they didn't really give me any reasons. They said,
and he came from Honda, right?
yeah,
at
so
the time?
Lunas had worked for Johnson, and then Johnson got hurt. He got landed on and had broke his wrist, and then he never really
Staubach
recovered
landed
from
on
that.
Staubach landed on him.
Storbeck, yeah.
Storbeck.
I kind of remember some of this. Remember when Lunas was on the show,
Yeah.
the whiskey show with Ping? And we've heard some scuttle a little bit. different.
He definitely has his opinions.
and that Lunas kind of pushed. He pushed for this deal. Like
Right.
I think he got Ricky or somebody to call for him. So,
Well,
Yeah.
he was, so he knew McCarty.
Okay.
Him and McCarty had been on the Suzuki team.
Okay.
When they were
So
mechanics.
that's how they had
back in the day,
connection.
and they had a relationship, and then Lunas was, a great seller of himself.
yes.
So, and I was like the total opposite. I mean,
Right.
I was there, like, to me, I was there to do a job, and my job was to work on that bike, and I wasn't there to, like, train Damon or yell at him or, make him do, 100 laps or...
Right.
That wasn't my job. My job was to make sure the bike would go.
Bike would work. You didn't want to be a coach.
Yeah, I wasn't a coach.
That's not my job.
No.
Yeah, and I get it. And it's hard to want to motivate somebody else, right? You
Right.
got to motivate yourself. That's
right,
what
exactly.
That's all I can do to motivate myself
Right.
to get out
I
of
think
bed.
it's impossible to motivate somebody.
Oh,
And
it's
at
so
that
hard.
time,
Yeah.
Sorry, at that time I was in a box van. I'm driving all over the
Right.
country, But anyway,
And how did it go when you got back to the shop and Brian took over? How did that go? I mean, when was your family? I'm guessing your family life was probably better when you got just working at the shop, being home more.
well, at that time I wasn't married yet. I was, that's kind of an interesting thing is, a lot of the mechanics nowadays, well, the mechanics seem to be older, but a lot of mechanics nowadays and even riders are married and have
Yeah.
families and all this stuff. Back then that wasn't really heard of.
No, you're right. And
Didn't
even
exist.
No.
But your kids are old. You've been married quite a while. Like,
I got married when I was 35.
holy moly.
34.
Okay. So
I didn't have my first kid till 37.
37.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, because you.
Are you going to make fun of him too?
Yeah, just you.
Okay.
He's got a young kid, and
Yeah.
and I call him Grandpa when he goes to pick up,
Yeah.
when he goes to her school events.
Yeah.
I go, yeah, it's Grandpa.
I've been there. I kind of
See? Back then, remember, if they got married or they had a kid, the riders, you said their career's over.
Right.
Remember that being
Right.
said?
That was how. Yeah, that's how it used to be perceived. Was if they got married, had a girlfriend,
They were done.
yeah, exactly.
Because they lost the eye of the tiger. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
They wouldn't have the drive because
Right.
they're spending all the time
right,
playing smoochy.
right,
Right. Okay.
right.
All right.
Rocky's trainer says it gives them weak legs.
Right. Paulie would know, right? Was it
Yeah.
Paulie?
No, it was
The other one.
Mick.
Mick. Okay.
Mick.
Oh, Mick.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're back in the shop, and you do that for how long?
Couple weeks.
What? Couple weeks. So you said, "Hey."
Yeah, I was out.
Yeah. So you didn't take that nicely then. You're like,
No, but I didn't take it nicely. I had so my father had his own business, and my dad had always wanted me to work with him, and he kind of made me an offer and said, "Hey, if you ever want to hang up your it's kind of funny because my parents never thought that I could make a living
Right.
working on motorcycles and being a race mechanic,
Especially dirt bikes.
yeah,
right.
And so, but I proved them wrong.
But then he's like, "Hey, you can come work for us if it doesn't work out."
And so then when that kind of happened, I was kind of already had been on the road for almost 10 years.
right.
And so I was kind of like, okay, well, what do I do now? What should I do now? Do I really want to be in the shop? And then my dad made me this offer, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm going to do that. So then I just told Macari, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to do something else.
You told me to shove it. You said.
In a nice way.
Okay.
What did you do for your dad? What was that?
So my dad had a lighting. He made lighting fixtures. So he made actually there were like accessories for pool tables, like game rooms.
Yeah, yeah.
So because back in those years, pool or billiards really had taken off.
Pool
So-
tables were big.
Yeah. So in the late 80s and kind of 90s. Pool tables were really big. People having game rooms in their house.
yeah.
So he used to make these really like kind of high end accessories and like
Lights.
lights and things like Tiffany shades and like soldered, hand soldered, all this kind of stuff. So I was doing that for a while. So I did that for a while, and
Well, this could be a good stopping point, Donnie. Right?
Yeah,
Our next segments, because we got us through our Yamaha years.
Yep.
Now you're a light man. What do you call you?
yeah, light man.
A light man.
Pool light man.
Pool light man. But anyway, so you got out of the industry for a little bit.
Yep.
Enough to go. Obviously, we already know the end of the story that you got back in. So
Right.
we're not left with too much suspense. So we can go over a couple cool products first. Okay, so our product right here is from Motion Pro. And Motion Pro, one of the cool things they do is custom make cables to whatever length that you need for that particular case. Right now we're working on this 01 CR125 with Dirt Bike Magazine, and we have a different carburetor on there, an aftermarket carburetor. And we're running their Vortex throttle, and the cable that came with it is not long enough. So we got one a little bit longer. So that's something Motion Pro does that a lot of people might forget about, but that's one of the big things they kind of started with, right? You remember that, Donnie? Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So they're big into cables.
That's like when they started making tools. I was like, wow,
Because they were kind of known for cables. I think that was the only place you could go to get custom cables. So that's a really cool thing to look for from Motion Pro. Okay, what we have here is a bag of washers, which might not seem like a big deal. But what's cool about these washers is they are crush washers, and these are for drain bolts on your various bikes. So Cometic has these washers you can buy them in, however much quantity you want. They're really inexpensive, and then you can change out whenever you're doing your oil changes. I like to change them every 2 or 3 oil changes. When I have this many, I might even do it more often. But like this is for our Yamaha, which also fits a bunch of the Honda models. The aluminum one. This is for the KTM models. This one right here.
I think too many people don't change them at all.
And so, one of the problems that happens, because I get a lot of comments about stripped drain bolts, and one of the problems that contributes to that is when the washer is completely collapsed, it's done. When they tighten up, they have to tighten so tight that it's pulling those threads out of the aluminum case. So that's why a fresh washer will help that and help prevent you from stripping threads. Also, I'm a big proponent of put that bolt in all the way, 3/4 all the way. If it has to go in with a ratchet, something's wrong. On the KTM bikes, we replace the bolt every once a year or so. The bolt just starts to get worn out. It's been used a bunch, so that's a good idea. So Cometic who's known for gaskets, has these cool these washers. You can kind of get whatever size. If you bring up your exact bike, they can sell you the whole thing. So that's a really cool thing from Cometic. All right, we're back. So now we're at the light years. How long does the light years last?
It lasted about 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
So the light years were a long time. So that's the big part of your. And so is that when you decide to get married and
Exactly.
Okay.
That's when I found my wife, and
I'm gonna have
transition into family
life,
kids.
and you stayed in Orange County the whole time, which
I did.
which you're lucky to do because I kind of wish that I had been able to do that and have a place in Orange County right now. Especially it's like 118 today.
Yeah.
out
Where'd
here.
you go to high school?
I went to Bell High.
Oh, you went to Bell.
Yeah,
in
so
the city of Bell,
in the city of Bell,
where they ripped all their citizens off there.
Yeah,
Bell.
exactly.
Yeah, okay,
That's the
yeah.
place. But I moved out of there before they ripped everybody off.
Okay, good.
So now you go 9 years.
Yep.
And then you guys just is your dad still in the business or is it just pretty much you running it now?
He was still in the business, and
Is it tapering off?
Yeah. So what's happening is it's tapering off, and at that point, the Chinese were getting into the billiard industry,
Right. And they're like,
and they were knocking off all our designs, and they were selling them like half the price.
yeah.
And so, but even though, like, you could definitely see the quality, ours was like solid brass,
Right.
Bronze, chrome, Tiffany, but they made some copies of stuff, and if you put them side by side and you looked at a distance, you go,
Right.
oh, well, dude, that's like $500 less.
Right.
I'll just take that one.
Right.
So that's kind of what happened, and so it was tapering off. Sales were tapering off, and then at that time, billiards wasn't as popular. That kind of tapered off, and so then I was looking for a job. I needed a job, and I was like, the only thing I know is motorcycles.
And lights. But you figured
and
that
lights.
business didn't go anywhere, so I'd rather go work on dirt bikes. And so now you're in your late 30s?
Yep. I was like, approaching 40.
Okay, and so where'd you go get a job next?
So Ron Heben, who's been in the industry forever.
Yep, I know.
He's been there.
Yeah.
He's been there everywhere.
He's been a good guy.
Yeah, no, Ron's awesome.
Yeah.
So Ron had been working for KTM.
Okay.
And he Supermoto was taken off.
Okay.
That was at the time Supermoto around 2003.
Okay.
2003, 2004. So I said, hey Ron, I want to kind of find out about this Supermoto. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
It looks kind of like the Nationals did back in the day when
Right.
we were doing it, and it was like real grassroots kind of thing. So I went to a race in Long Beach by the Queen Mary, and I ran into Mickey Diamond and talked to a few guys, and then Mickey had raced at Yamaha in
87.
87, 88.
Yep.
And so I knew Mickey already, and he was doing Supermoto, and like McGrath was doing Supermoto.
Oh, yeah.
Wardy was doing Supermoto. Yeah. So I got in there and I started talking to Mickey, and he had a sponsor, All Access.
Yep.
So then I said, hey, I want to kind of, do you need help? What can I do? I'm looking for a job. So I met his sponsors, and I started working for him.
Okay.
So I back to like
Building stages? Building
no,
stages
not
and
stages. I was building his Supermoto bikes and trying to keep them together. And so then that led to a job at KTM.
Because Mickey was probably riding Hondas.
No, he was riding a KTM.
He was riding a KTM.
He was riding KTM
Okay.
450s and the open bike.
Okay.
So then I started, at that time, I had to learn how to work on four strokes.
Right.
Which, I mean, obviously I went to a school to learn all that, but I never used any of that stuff.
And it'd been a long time. Now
Until 2003 is when I started.
Yeah, so it's like 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay, you went to the school. Okay.
Yeah, so I went to school again.
Okay. But just self-taught school.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So you get a job at KTM, and that's when KTM was in Temecula?
yeah, they had moved into Temecula from San Diego at that point.
Okay.
So I was commuting for 4 years from Orange County to Temecula.
The only thing I'll say is that's a good commute compared to other people's
Yeah,
commute.
it was the right direction
You're
at
going
that
west.
time.
Exactly.
For those that don't know, in California, if you're going the opposite, he'd be going the opposite of most traffic.
Yeah.
So that the distance, was like an hour.
It was
and
an
a half?
hour. Hour. If there was no accident, no nothing,
Right.
just a regular day, I could do it in an hour, up and back.
Right.
Well, 2 hours.
Right.
Up and back.
Yeah. So nowadays everybody's pretty happy with an hour commute.
Yeah.
People are doing 2 hours one way. So
Yep.
so you were doing that for 4 years, and you
Yep.
mainly worked on Supermoto. You also when you sent photos, you also helped out with Kurt.
Kurt Caselli. Yeah. So
What year round was that?
2004.
Okay.
2005. So I was Kurt's mechanic in 2004 and 5, and then I moved over into building the race engines for 2006 and 7.
Okay.
So
You picked up the 4-stroke thing, obviously.
yeah.
If you're building
Pretty
engines,
fast.
yeah.
Were you doing other stuff for like Kurt Nickel and Jürgen Kunzel was here and
So I built all those engines.
all those guys?
So
That's
what
right.
happened was so I worked for Mickey. Mickey was a privateer, so I worked for him for 2003, and then I did it part-time for 2004. I was like working at KTM and flying out on the weekends to work on Mickey's bikes. And then that kind of got old, and then KTM was like saying, hey, we don't really want you doing that anymore. So I was like, okay, well, that's fine with me. So then we found a mechanic for Mickey, and then I just started building all the race engines for the whole Supermoto team. And then I was working on Kurt's bikes, his off-road bikes for like works races and some of the Hare and Hounds he did. And I kind of had to learn off-road because I really didn't know much about off-road. And his dad, Rich Caselli, kind of took me under his wing and showed me all his tricks and tips and how to change and put mousses
on with the proper tools.
tools. Yeah, you don't want to get hit with one of these. But
So you were actually going to a lot of the races too and helping out, not just the engines then.
I was flying to all the Supermoto races, and then I was going to all of Kurt's races.
So I went to all the Supermoto races. I worked with Scott Hoffman at Supermoto Racer. So
Okay, I know Scott.
I did photos and stories with him.
Yep,
So I was racing all those. So I went to all those races.
I was there too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so you're doing those, and you're going to some off-road races.
Yep.
And you hadn't really been to off. What'd you think of those things? Because the engines have to be obviously durable and can last.
Right.
What'd you think?
It took me a little bit, to kind of get used to it. I mean, I was kind of treating it more like a moto thing, but then I figured out, well, it's not so much about speed, it's durability.
Right.
And finishing the race. So once I got that figured out, and then, but also I think that, I kind of think that I upped the kind of like, the look of off-road by just making the bikes look a lot better and not so beat. At that time, I know that Ty had a team. Ty Davis had his own team at that time, and KTM was a big part of that. Honda was doing some stuff, but I know that the bikes were always looking kind of beat up.
Yep.
So I tried to keep them like in a little bit more of a pristine, and I kind of felt like I had an impression on making the off-road look a little bit more tidy. And cleaner.
That's awesome. and you won some races with Kurt, obviously.
Yeah, we won some works races, and then so the year that I built the engine, so I got away from being Kurt's mechanic because I just didn't want to drive to all those races and do all that, and they were looking for an engine guy. So I moved into the engine department, and I built all the motors for the Supermoto team. I built all the motors for the off-road team, and but not just Kurt. I was doing like the Enduro series and the GNCC series, the guys that we had. So they were sending engines to me, and and the engines weren't like highly modified, but it was just, like I said, it's more about making sure that they finished the race.
Yeah, that everything, the specs were all in. And this is before KTMs were cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was.
It definitely was.
It was on that kind of cusp of...
We all accepted them as, even at that time when they were doing the Supermoto thing and Kurt was winning off-road, you're like, well, that's off-road.
Yeah.
That's Supermoto.
Right.
That's not Supercross. That's not Nationals.
Right.
So it was a different time. And, with those engines, we knew even back then, we're like, these engines seem pretty good.
Yeah.
Like durable. They looked a little bit heavier and cobbier than the Japanese engines.
Right. They weren't as compact yet.
Right. They were definitely like a little bit bigger and bulkier.
Right.
But did you guys have many failures back then?
So one of the races that when we were in the middle of the championship for the works race, I was building the engines. We ended up doing the race at Pismo Beach. And at the race at Pismo Beach, we ended up blowing a motor up. And it was my fault. I didn't use the proper gasket for the stator cover.
Yeah.
So we tried to run
You
this...
sucked a little sand.
Exactly. So we tried to run this cover that had more oil volume. And but I didn't use the right gasket, so the gasket sucked in, and it pulled sand with it, and the motor blew up. And at that time, I didn't really, for some reason, it didn't really dawn on me like how important these races were.
Right.
But when I blew that motor up, I found out how important it was. And I got a pretty good chewing out by Kurt Nicole, who was he was the manager of motorsports at that time.
And Kurt's a very, I like him a lot, but he's a serious guy when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah. And I didn't, like I said, at that point, it was kind of funny. I mean, it took me all that time to realize how important that the stuff that I was doing was being looked at in Austria.
Right.
And I didn't really think about that.
Right.
And how important that stuff was. And it was kind of an eye-opener.
Yeah, well, very good.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's talk about a little bit of tool tech real quick.
Okay.
We already talked about the tire spoons. You got to have the big heavy-duty ones.
Yep.
I asked him to bring in some cool tools. Show us the case tool over here. You got the case puller, too. You can show the puller first.
So the puller, this gets the cases apart.
Yep, and that's a Kawasaki.
It's a pretty
number.
basic. This is a Kawasaki one. The one, I also Yamaha had their own, but this is real similar to the one that I used at Yamaha.
Yep.
And then this thing is actually a case, it's an assembly tool. So it actually compresses the cases together through this rod. So I'll if I can get it apart real quick. So this piece goes on the end of the crank.
Yep.
And then you put this piece on there and you thread it on. And then once you get it tight, you tighten this nut up and it pulls the cases together. And so you could do this. I use this in the box fan.
Yeah.
So we used to do it manually. You could also heat the bearing up a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I would always do is
Yep.
heat up the bearing and then tap them together.
But sometimes they were pretty tight.
Yeah.
And so I used to like to use this tool.
Very cool. And is that tool from the 80s?
This one actually is.
And you guys made it?
No, it was, Yamaha had a tool company that would make this stuff.
Very cool.
Yep.
So they actually had it custom made. It wasn't for sale. And then what about the chain breaker custom?
So the chain breaker, I don't even remember
like Home Depot looking.
Yeah, but you know what? This actually came from Japan, and I think I don't really know who gave it to me, but at the time, this ratcheting chain breaker, you never seen any of these.
No.
So this is a tool that I used a lot because we used to use the chains that had links in a rivet link in them.
Yeah.
So we didn't use any Master link.
Yep.
So we used to use that. So you
could press them with this.
This one you can't press it with. This one was only to break it.
Only to break it. Okay.
But yeah, so we used to use those tools. Those were anytime you had to take the chain apart, you had to have that tool.
I don't know if I realized how much you did engines at KTM because at Kawasaki you don't really have to do a whole lot of engines.
I do. I've been doing a few.
Oh, really? On some of the media bikes that come back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Not mine. When I return a bike, it's good.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna guess which magazines are given the ones you have to rebuild. I'm not gonna say it out loud.
So it's funny because I was thinking the same thing right now.
So a hand impact. A lot of people don't even really know what these are. I show it a lot on our stuff.
Yep.
Because I have a couple different ones and I show using it.
So this thing is probably 40 years old.
Right.
But I use this a lot on the road also because you had Phillips screws.
Right.
And so you had to have this to get the Phillips screws out.
And then when you assembled it, you would give it a tap to tighten as well, right? Just a tap all the way around on each one. Or would you always just tighten just with the Phillips screwdriver?
I think I just Phillips screwdriver.
Okay.
Yep.
Didn't you change, because guys used to change those out to Allens, the Phillips out.
The cases.
The cases.
We might have. I think it's kind of vague. I don't remember if we actually did that.
That's a long time ago, Donnie.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. But I do remember we used it on the Phillips. But yeah.
All right. So now I'm guessing you work at KTM for a while, and then you're deciding you want less of a commute.
And pretty much, yep.
Because you liked everybody there. It was a good.
Actually, I really liked KTM. It was actually
because I've seen you talking with a lot of them, over the years.
Yeah, I really liked the guys that worked there. I worked with at the end. I worked with Leighton Rice, who's still there. He's head of the engine department.
Yep.
Actually, Leighton and I went to Austria together.
Oh, cool.
Right before I left.
That's right. You should have said I shouldn't go.
Well, I didn't know if I had the job. So I kind of knew about Cowie and the job that I was looking for.
Uh-huh.
And I had talked to some people, but I hadn't got a definite yes. And so they had scheduled me to go to Austria at the end of the year to do some research stuff. And so Leighton and I, that was like a yearly thing that Leighton had went to. So it was the first time I got to go. And so Leighton and I went
First
together.
and last.
First and last. So Leighton and I, it was like towards the end of October. We went over to Austria. We were only there for 3 days. We kind of seen some pretty interesting stuff. I seen actually one of the first, I can say it now, I can see one of the very first KTM link bikes that they had a link, because before they had the PDS system. And it actually was the back end of a Yamaha that they had cut off and put it onto a KTM.
So they were testing stuff early to.
They were testing stuff there. So anyway, I got to go there, and then when I came back, I found out about Cowie, and so I was able to get a job at Cowie. Joe Wilson, who was the guy that had worked at Yamaha, I knew, and so he got me in at Kawasaki in 2008.
That's awesome.
So,
and that's about the time I've been seeing. And for whatever it's worth, Kawasaki does a really good job at all the media events. So whether it's a new bike launch or even you even go out with other things, street bikes.
Yep, I do.
Watercraft.
I do everything.
Yeah.
Side by sides. A lot of side by side stuff now.
Yeah.
Like the dirt bikes, sport bikes, cruisers. We did a lot of different events, which is kind of what I like. It's kind of mixes it up. It keeps it interesting. And then, but like I like the Moto because it keeps me kind of involved with what's going on in the industry. I know all the guys in the race shop. They, help me from time to time. I help them with stuff from time to time. We share information. So it's pretty good. I built up a really good relationship with a lot of people there.
And you stayed riding a bit during this time.
Yep, I still do some riding.
Yeah. So you stayed into it and stayed into riding. Also, might not know this, but you ride road bike. At some of the events we go to, before or after dinner, you'd be going off on this road bike ride.
Yep. Oh yeah. I do cycling.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big part of my.
That's the term, Donnie.
Yeah.
That's what we should pick up, me and you.
Cycling?
Yeah.
Cycling.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. That ship has sailed?
Yeah, for sure.
For both of us. I think so. Okay.
Well, it's the only thing that I like because my knees are bad.
Yeah.
So it's light on the knees.
Right.
I only got mountain bikes when they had some assist to them.
Yeah.
All right. So we're way late on our show. So those guys that always say, "Don't worry about how long it is," you got your wish. So we're gonna talk. We do a CD every week.
Okay.
Because we're old, and so we're gonna talk Van Halen now. So when I did for this time, I thought it'd be fun to. I texted him last night and said, "Hey, what rock bands do you like from the '80s?" He sends me a couple, but the one he has is Van Halen. And
Did he bring an 8-track from Van Halen?
No, but he said Van Halen, not Van Hagar.
Oh boy!
So
Oh boy!
do you know where this is going?
No.
Okay, so I am all Van Hagar over here because I guess it's because I'm younger.
Okay, maybe.
Okay,
I'm so disappointed, Jay.
Hey, I just saw some interviews with Hagar talking about David Lee Roth.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah,
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, but I have like 8. I didn't bring all of them, all the David Lee Roth albums, but I need to, because here's my problem with David Lee Roth. Spencer knows I joke around. I don't like David Lee Roth that
Right.
much. But he was a good front man, okay, right? But he wasn't a great singer or a great human, right?
Right.
Okay, all that. But they had some pretty good songs then. I think the shift when Hagar came in, I think was a lot more Eddie and Alex and the music being harder and so forth. But this album is insane right here. Okay, so let's go over 5150 first, right?
Let's go.
Right, you know 5150, good enough. Why Can't This Be Love? Get Up, Dreams, Summer Nights, Best of Both Worlds, Love Walks In, 5150 and Inside. There's like 5 amazing
Really
songs
good.
there. But I did, to be fair, I did go to Van Halen 1, right? The first album. Yeah. I mean, like, okay, so Running with the Devil, Eruption, kind of good, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The guitar on Eruption.
You really got me. Ain't Talking About Love, I'm the One, Jamie's Crying, Atomic Punk, Feel Your Love Tonight, Little Dreamer, Ice Cream Man. Ice Cream Man's a perfect example of why I hate David Lee Roth. And that's the problem. His solo albums were terrible.
Yeah,
and I can't stand listening to him. But I will say, this is like eight good songs, like amazing songs, right?
It's got some great songs.
Right. So you're like, it's pretty hard to like argue with that. So I'm going to give it to you that this is probably because as I was going through them, I was looking at the albums. I'm like, man, that's pretty good. And I could Women and Children first,
Yep.
and even Van Halen 2. I think they were ready. And a funny story is that when Van Halen was forming, they actually considered Sammy Hagar. before
Yeah,
they got
before
David.
him.
Oh, I didn't know
before
that.
yeah, before Hagar, he was in Montrose, his band,
Right.
and they had actually considered this.
They were copying some of their music from Montrose.
right.
Oh, I see.
So that's how I heard the story a couple times, and they're like, so that's how that connection kind of came about. They and then David Lee Roth, I think, cost the band a lot in image and everything. Where you know
Right.
he was, because his live stuff isn't very good. You know, that's the reality.
He jumped around in tight pants a lot.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, you can't argue with that though. Van Halen won, and Eddie's amazing, and
This was kind of my go-to CD when I was driving late at night in the box van, and I had to get those last, 25 miles or whatever it was. I would pop this in and just turn it way up, and it got me to the hotel.
some of those, maybe some sunflower seeds.
And a lot of sunflower seeds.
Isn't it
and
funny how
some
when you were in the box
Starburst.
van, it's basically you in the box van.
Yep.
And now each rider has like almost a team of guys around them.
they got agents and
Well, not just that, but
Fitness
there's like
guys
there's a crew
and-
chief, and then
right.
there's several mechanics, and
crew chief.
it's like
mechanic.
there's so many more guys working on the bikes now.
Yep.
And
They
I
don't change their own tires. We changed all our own tires.
right, and
That's why my wrists are all screwed up.
why doing tires.
Yeah.
I do a lot of tires, so you have to do good technique.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't do that.
All right. So, but it's really cool to hear your stories. How many years were you traveling with the box van? There's like 8 to 10. Do you think?
At least 8. And I did a couple of years. Well, I did a little bit too when I was at KTM because
Okay.
the off-road team still used the box van.
Okay.
And so we would take the box van to go to works races. So I'd have to drive all the way to Palmdale to pick up Rich Caselli.
Oh.
And then Rich and I would drive to the races from there. And I like, Rich, can't you just make me somewhere halfways? No, you got to come out and and pick me up. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, and when they're in Phoenix, you're going the exact opposite direction.
Exactly.
Oh, painful.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, any advice for people that want to be mechanics or work in the industry? Because we have a bit of a thing around here that I'm kind of called a dream crusher.
Dream crusher.
Because unfortunately, like you were able to come in at a good time frame.
Right.
Okay. Some of that time frame's a little bit tougher now. Like
Right.
to come in and make a living.
Right.
It can be a little tougher to come in this time frame. But
As a race mechanic?
yeah,
Okay,
or any type of mechanic.
Yeah.
Any type of mechanic because there's a lot of guys that watch this show, younger guys who want to be a mechanic, work in the industry.
Yep.
Any thoughts or advice for guys?
Well, I think you have to have a good foundation. So you need to learn the basics, and the basics meaning doing everything like suspension if you can, motors, the whole bike, the whole routine. So, I mean, if you could go into some kind of a school, I know that the schools are expensive and, and getting that basic foundation. But then I think after that, you have to get your feet wet. So you're going to have to go and hook up with a rider, a privateer, or a local guy or whatever it is, and work on his bike. And even if you have to work for free, which is what I did for a while, because I wanted to learn.
Right.
I wanted to be part of this industry.
Yep.
And so I kind of worked for free, kind of, you kind of build up, your experience.
Right.
And you're going to make some mistakes, and you just kind of hook up with a guy, and kind of as his career advances and you do a good job, then your career is going to advance.
And that's David O'Connor, who's in the engine shop now over at KTM.
Right.
He did similar thing, working for very little or nothing,
Yep.
working for different privateers.
Right.
Worked his way up, then got a job.
Yep.
He's in Kawasaki and KTM, and
You have to look at it like college, right? You don't get paid while you're in college to learn.
No.
You have to learn before you can make a living.
You have to fake it.
Yeah.
Until you make it. As long as you don't screw up too bad, and the biggest thing is don't get your rider hurt.
Right.
Don't blow up their motors.
And that, because we have guys in the shop that help me because there's just so much to do when we have an intro and we have so many bikes. And so I create like a checklist.
Yep.
But I always tell all the guys even the guys that aren't real familiar with working on dirt bikes, is to make sure not to leave anything loose because we don't want to get anybody hurt.
Right.
And that's the quickest way, is to leave something loose. And these guys are doing huge jumps. They're going really fast. Yep. They're doing a lot of stuff that if something comes loose, they can get seriously hurt.
It always stresses me out. Just on project bikes I build or whatever,
Right.
and I'm going out. and I'm going over everything. It's a big concern, and I've had other guys helping me, and
Right.
sometimes that doesn't always line up with what I'm checking.
Exactly.
And I've made mistakes too, and so
Yep.
mistakes. But that's one of the best ways you learn, unfortunately, is a mistake. But you don't want a mistake to cost anybody, so
Right.
that part's nice. It's to not cost anybody an injury.
You want me to give you another little tidbit story?
Yeah.
Can I have you real quick? So we were at, I believe it was Axton, Virginia,
Yeah.
125 National. So I believe we won the overall there. And the bike, so we had to switch motors between motos.
Oh.
We were having a problem with the countershaft bearing would start to back out, and then when it did, it tightened up the whole transmission. So I noticed it was doing that after the first moto. So we pulled the engines, and I think me and maybe Bob Oliver, we swapped the whole thing out, got it all ready, and and me being the main mechanic, I had the final check of doing everything.
Yeah.
So we go out. I'm pretty sure he won that moto. I know we got the overall and won the moto. And we come back, go into tech inspection, and I'm looking at the bike. And for some reason, I think I had to start the bike for something. And I was looking down, and I'm looking at the countershaft sprocket, and I see the nut going like this.
Was it held on? Did that bike have a washer?
It had a washer,
Yeah.
but you could definitely see it was pretty loose. Like it had already started turning,
So it had a lap or two left.
probably.
Wow, that's scary, right?
Yeah.
Were those held on by a big nut, and on that one?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Is
Yeah.
the nut had backed out
Yeah,
already,
and
and,
then
it was loose. And you could, when he started it, the vibration,
Was
you could
shaking.
see it move back and forth. And I was like, because you
Weren't those the ones where you knocked the washer over onto the nut?
Yeah, you bend it.
you bend it,
Yeah.
but it looked like it wasn't bent enough, and definitely it had moved. And to have something like burst your bubble, because you're thinking, oh man, we're badass
I'm
today.
awesome, yeah.
We won a national. I mean, to win a national race as a mechanic and a rider is probably one of the best feelings you can ever have, only because it's something that you've worked for
a big
a
deal.
long time to get there.
Yeah.
And when you do that, and then you think, man, this is a great day, and I'm this badass guy. And then I look down and I see that nut. It was like, dude, my bubble just went, psh.
You realized how easy it could
Exactly.
It could have gone really bad.
It could have gone really bad, but the Moto gods were watching out for us that day.
That's awesome.
Right?
All right,
Okay.
cool. All right, so are you going to be doing this for a lot longer?
So I probably have maybe another 3 years left.
Okay. Then the guys watching this show are going to be gunning.
Hey,
for
they got
the
a job.
Kind of
They
for
got
my
a
job. Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, I want that job.
Yeah.
But then they don't know what they need to check housing prices in Orange County.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things is being able to live close by there, because quite a few guys that we have that work there come from Temecula and Orange
Okay,
County,
yeah.
Marietta, this Inland Empire, and it's a drive.
Yeah, and then the traffic's brutal.
The traffic is brutal.
Yeah,
That's why I made my commute really short.
So
Well, that's why I moved back over the mountain, on the other side of the mountain, is so that I just, like you said, even though the commute wasn't too bad because of the traffic, we're going the opposite way of traffic, but just I'm like 30 minutes from home to work.
Yeah, you have an hour more a day.
Exactly.
Easy. So that's nice. All right, it's been awesome having you. You're awesome, and you're a big help. Like I said, in Kawasaki, and you do a great job at all these events and shootouts and things like that.
Yep.
And he always has good snacks and sandwiches. So you know where I go for.
I know.
Yeah, he has nice sandwiches in there.
You
So,
don't pass up a meal.
No.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of like the intro stuff that we do,
Yeah.
and how well it comes out and professional looking, and I believe most or all of the media people enjoy it.
Yes, and Brad, who's is he kind of over that department? Brad?
Yeah, so Brad is a marketing supervisor.
Okay, and so all of them allow you guys to have a good image and to spend the money to have a little budget
Right,
to do things.
right. Ken Essex is that manager of.
Yeah, so it's nice. It's a good image for the brand and everything, and
Yep.
it's exciting. And KX450 that was new this year has been the last few years it's been one of the top bikes in the 450 class.
And even too, being able to have the relationship with the race team, we're able to get race mechanics there. We've had a few Brian Kranz,
Yeah.
who's worked for Tomac. Dean, who's an engine builder. Jeremy Robinson, who's a fabricator guy. So we've able to bring all our resources together to make a really good event. Because it's all about the experience.
Right. And that you guys have done a great job of that. So I'm looking forward to the new 250 as well.
Yes.
So I'm not I would really like a new 350, but that's
350.
yeah. But we'll
That
go.
might be down the road. Probably might be retired at that point.
Right, it's my afraid of. I think it's with all the Japanese manufacturers. I've been asking for because I think it's really good. But I did ride my 250 today and was really loving the 250. So,
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Sorry, it's a little long for those that don't like them long. My wife will complain that it's this long because she does watch all of them all the way through.
She does.
Believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, and then she has some critiques.
My
I was
wife
going to
does.
say, does she critique?
She does. And luckily, I didn't eat right before because she can tell when I eat and I have a little
My wife doesn't watch them all the way through.
no, for sure.
No.
All right, thanks, Donnie. Appreciate it, and again, thanks to Chavez for coming out. And
Thank
see.
you.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. We'll see you guys next time. See ya. We work with some great companies, and here's a list of those right now: Dunlop motorcycle tires, Wiseco piston, Vinco air shocks and dirt bike parts, FMF exhaust, Decal Works graphics, Pro X racing parts, Recluse clutch revolution, Motion Pro specialty motorcycle tools, Works connection, Uni filter, Klotz oil, Cometic gasket, MX plastics, JE pistons, Cardo systems, ODI bars and grips. And remember, if you shop Rocky Mountain, use our link from our site, Linktree, or link in description of the videos. Thanks for watching and listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.